They thought they could steal 2,000 acres of my family's ranch land through an illegal HOA sale, so I legally foreclosed on every single one of their McMansions. I'm standing here on what used to be my front porch, holding foreclosure notices for 12 houses in the fancy subdivision next door. The wind whistles through bare fence posts where my grandfather's oak trees once stood, carrying the acrid smell of diesel fuel from the construction equipment that destroyed everything. 6 months ago, I owned the biggest cattle spread in 3 counties. Today, I own their mortgage companies. But here's what they didn't know about me when HOA President Karen Blackwell decided to play games with my family's legacy. What would you do if someone stole your great-grandfather's homestead and poisoned your well water to cover their tracks? Right now, Karen's living in a studio apartment above the town's only subway, wondering how a simple cowboy managed to turn her million-dollar empire into a federal crime scene. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this story proves that sometimes the little guy can win when you know how the system really works. Stick around, because I'm about to show you exactly how to turn the tables on corrupt authority using their own weapons against them. My name's Jake Morrison, and I'm the 3rd generation to work this land in Clearwater County, Montana. My grandfather bought these 2,000 acres in 1952 with his GI Bill money, rolling hills perfect for cattle, with a creek running through the heart of it that's never run dry. Every morning for 34 years, I've started my day with coffee on the wraparound porch, listening to meadowlarks singing over the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. It's the kind of peace you can't buy in any city. The ranch was struggling, sure. My divorce 2 years ago didn't help the finances, and my 8-year-old daughter Emma only visits every other weekend now. But we were breaking even with our organic beef operation, a small but loyal customer base who appreciated knowing exactly where their food came from. Then Karen Blackwell moved in next door. Picture this: perfectly coiffed blonde bob, always wearing designer athleisure that probably cost more than my monthly feed bill, driving a white BMW X5 that she kept spotless despite living in ranch country. Karen and her tech executive husband Brad had cashed out of Phoenix after his company went public, and they'd decided rural Montana was their personal playground. She was the self-appointed HOA president of Clearwater Meadows Estates, a new subdivision of McMansions built on what used to be the Henderson family farm. Our first meeting, she showed up unannounced on a Tuesday morning, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against my weathered wooden fence post while I finished feeding the cattle. "Those feeding stations are an eyesore," she announced without so much as a hello. "They're visible from our neighborhood and, frankly, they're lowering our property values." I explained politely that my ranch had been here 70 years before her subdivision existed, offered to plant some privacy trees if it bothered her that much. You know what she said? "Trees take too long to grow. You need to relocate your agricultural activities to somewhere less visible." The woman had been in Montana all of 3 months, and she was telling me to hide my cattle operation. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Karen escalated from complaints to demands to outright threats. The HOA sent official letters about noise violations. Apparently, my roosters crowing at dawn were disturbing their beauty sleep. They complained to the county about unpleasant odors and undesirable wildlife that my ranch attracted. Every reasonable solution I offered got shot down. When I suggested moving the roosters further from the property line, Karen's response was a cease and desist letter from some fancy attorney claiming my entire operation was an agricultural nuisance. Standing in my barn that day, reading that legal threat while Karen's expensive perfume clashed with the honest smell of hay and leather, I should have seen what was coming. This wasn't about noise or property values. This was about Karen wanting my land, and she was willing to destroy my family's legacy to get it. The real wake-up call came on a crisp October morning when I found surveyors on my property without permission. When I confronted them, they showed me paperwork claiming a 47-acre strip along our shared border actually belonged to the HOA common area. Karen appeared like she'd been waiting in the wings, clutching some questionable survey from 1978 that showed completely different property lines than every other document I'd ever seen. The kicker? My grandfather's original deed, the one that clearly proved the Morrison family owned every acre, had mysteriously vanished from the county records. Sometimes paperwork gets misplaced over the decades, Karen said with a smile that made my skin crawl. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with a difficult neighbor. I was dealing with a predator. Karen didn't waste time. Within a week, the HOA filed an adverse possession claim on those 47 acres, citing community use of the land for hiking trails. Turns out, they'd been secretly maintaining trails and placing benches on my property for 2 years, sneaky as foxes, doing it while I was in town on supply runs. Here's the legal technicality that almost screwed me. Montana adverse possession requires only 5 years of continuous use. But Karen's lawyers claimed their substantial improvements accelerated the timeline. A judge granted a temporary restraining order preventing me from removing their trails or benches. Suddenly, I couldn't touch my own land. But Karen made her first mistake by getting too clever. While researching her claims, I discovered that Brad, her husband, owned the surveying company that had produced that convenient 1978 survey. Late-night internet searches became my new hobby, my fingers clicking through records while coffee grew cold on the kitchen table. That's when I found the Arizona State Licensing Board's citation against the same surveying company for, you guessed it, fraudulent boundary survey. Here's your first knowledge nugget. Adverse possession claims require hostile, open, notorious, and continuous use of property. Secret trail maintenance done while the owner's away doesn't qualify because it's not open and notorious. So I had ammunition. But Karen was just getting started with her pressure campaign. The local newspaper ran a puff piece about the HOA's community beautification efforts, complete with a photo of Karen and her neighbors posing on their hiking trail. The caption praised their responsible land stewardship on my grandfather's property. Then the anonymous threats started. A note slipped under my windshield wiper: sell out or we'll make your life hell. The hardware store owner, a HOA member, suddenly refused to extend my usual credit terms. The veterinarian who'd been treating my cattle for 15 years doubled her ranch call fees overnight. It's amazing how quickly your neighbors can become strangers when there's money involved. But I wasn't completely alone. During one of my trips to the county clerk's office, elderly Mabel whispered something that changed everything. That woman's been in here an awful lot asking about old surveys. Digging through dusty file boxes, papers crackling between my calloused fingers, I discovered a pattern. 3 other longtime landowners near Clearwater Meadows had quietly sold to developers after facing similar legal pressure. The real bombshell? Karen had requested copies of the Morrison family deed 6 months before filing her adverse possession claim. This wasn't opportunistic. This was premeditated. I scraped together my last savings to hire an attorney in Helena who specialized in property rights. Best money I ever spent. She found my grandfather's original 1952 deed in the state archives, clear as daylight, showing every acre of the 2,000 belonged to the Morrison family. We filed a motion to dismiss Karen's claim and demanded attorney fees. Karen's response was pure desperation disguised as righteous anger. She showed up at my ranch with the county sheriff, claiming I'd threatened her during our last conversation. Sheriff Thompson knew my family for decades. He just politely explained that discussing property boundaries wasn't against any law he knew of. As Karen stormed off, she hissed at me, "This isn't over, cowboy." She was right about that, but she had no idea what she'd just started. Karen's next move was straight out of the neighborhood dictator playbook. The HOA voted to assess every member $5,000 for a legal defense fund to fight my frivolous lawsuit. $5,000 each from 43 families. That's over $200,000, 0 cents, to destroy one rancher who dared to defend his property rights. But Karen wasn't satisfied with just bankrupting me legally. She started spreading rumors that my cattle were diseased, which triggered a state agriculture department inspection. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from inspectors, while Emma asked why Daddy seemed so worried all the time. The cattle were perfectly healthy, of course, but the inspection cost me a week of lost work and veterinary fees I couldn't afford. Then Karen got creative with some late-night sabotage that would make a mafia enforcer proud. Someone started cutting my fences after dark, letting cattle wander onto neighboring properties. I'd wake up to angry calls from other ranchers about my loose livestock, then spend hours rounding up confused cattle and mending wire. Trail cameras revealed the truth. HOA members sneaking onto my ranch on ATVs, deliberately cutting fence lines to create cattle trespass incidents. The acrid scent of fresh-cut wire and diesel exhaust from their midnight raids became regular morning discoveries. Karen filed complaints with the county about my inability to control livestock, and Sheriff Thompson, under pressure from his superiors, had to issue citations. $500 per incident, and the incidents kept happening. Here's knowledge nugget number 2. Criminal mischief charges apply to intentional property damage, even if individual incidents seem minor. If total damage exceeds $1,500, 0 cents, it becomes a felony in most states. While documenting Karen's fence-cutting operation, I discovered her husband Brad had been flying drones over my property, claiming it was surveying work. Problem was, Brad didn't have a commercial drone license. One FAA complaint later, and suddenly the aerial surveillance stopped. But Karen was just getting warmed up with her financial pressure campaign. The local bank president, guess which subdivision he lived in, suddenly called my ranch loan and demanded immediate payment. The feed supplier refused delivery unless I paid cash up front. My insurance company canceled my liability policy after anonymous complaints about dangerous conditions on the property. Sitting at my kitchen table, hands shaking as I counted cash for cattle feed while my daughter's college fund dwindled, I realized Karen's strategy was death by 1,000 cuts. She couldn't steal my land directly, so she'd bankrupt me into selling. That's when Emma asked why we couldn't go to Dairy Queen anymore like we used to. 8 years old, and she was watching her dad's world crumble over some neighbor lady's greed. But Karen made another crucial mistake. She was too successful for her own good. While researching her background for the civil rights lawsuit my attorney suggested, I found newspaper archives from Phoenix describing identical tactics against a Hispanic family who'd owned a small farm for generations. The pattern was unmistakable: harassment, legal pressure, financial strangulation, then a below-market buyout offer right when the family was most desperate. Knowledge nugget 3. Pattern harassment can support federal civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. 1985, conspiracy to deprive citizens of equal protection. Systematic targeting based on economic status or rural lifestyle counts as discrimination. The Phoenix newspaper articles revealed that Karen's husband's development company had purchased 3 family farms at 40% below market value after similar harassment campaigns. This wasn't personal vendetta, this was Karen's business model. My attorney filed harassment charges and a federal civil rights complaint. Local media picked up the story. David v. Goliath, rancher fights HOA land grab. Karen's response was swift and vicious. I received an eviction notice claiming my ranch violated county health codes, followed by the most devastating blow yet. Someone poisoned my stock tank, killing 3 cattle and requiring emergency treatment for the survivors. $8,000 in veterinary bills, and the message was crystal clear. This had gone way beyond property disputes. This was war. Karen decided to deploy her nuclear option. She dug up some obscure 1962 county ordinance requiring agricultural operations to maintain $2 million in liability insurance. Since my policy had been mysteriously canceled, this dormant law suddenly became grounds for shutting down my entire ranch. Sheriff Thompson arrived at dawn with a cease and desist order. All cattle had to be removed within 72 hours, or the county would seize them for public safety violations. Standing on my porch, watching Emma cry as I explained we might lose everything while meadowlarks still sang their oblivious songs outside, I felt like David facing Goliath with a broken slingshot. That's when Karen made her most revealing move yet. She offered to help by purchasing the ranch for 40% of market value. Generous considering your legal troubles, she said with that predatory smile. The woman was literally profiting from the crisis she'd created. Meanwhile, the community turned against me faster than milk spoils in summer heat. The local newspaper ran an editorial supporting the HOA's property rights, complete with quotes from concerned citizens worried about my vendetta against community progress. The town council meeting was packed, with Clearwater Meadows residents demanding my ranch be permanently closed. Former friends avoided eye contact as my worn boots echoed in the empty town hall. My only supporter was Mabel from the county clerk's office, who whispered, "Keep digging, hun," as I sat alone in the back row, watching my neighbors treat me like a pariah. But sometimes desperation breeds discovery. While researching that 1962 ordinance, I found something Karen hadn't counted on: The law was originally written to target Native American ranching operations and had been ruled unconstitutional in 1978. The ruling was never formally added to county records, but federal law trumped local ordinances. Here's a critical knowledge nugget. Discriminatory laws remain invalid even if not formally repealed. They can be challenged under the Equal Protection Clause. A civil rights attorney in Billings agreed to take my case pro bono after recognizing the historical discrimination pattern. While building my constitutional challenge, I stumbled onto something that changed everything. Clearwater Meadows HOA had never filed proper incorporation papers with the state. Karen had been collecting fees and issuing fines without any legal authority whatsoever. $340,000 in HOA accounts were actually under Karen's personal control. Another knowledge nugget: operating a fake HOA is wire fraud if fees are collected across state lines, federal felony with a 20-year maximum sentence. But Karen wasn't done trying to destroy me. My well water suddenly tested positive for industrial chemicals. The contamination source? Illegal dumping from Clearwater Meadows construction runoff directly into the aquifer. This EPA violation could shut down the entire development, which explained Karen's frantic settlement offer. $500,000 cash if I'd sign an NDA and move away. I pretended to consider the offer while my attorney documented everything for federal authorities. Karen thought she was buying my silence. Instead, she was confessing to environmental crimes on tape. The Regional Cattlemen's Association finally stepped up with a legal defense fund, and Emma's teacher organized a barbecue fundraiser that filled my property with the smell of honest smoke and community support. For the first time in months, I wasn't fighting alone. But Karen's husband Brad made one final mistake that sealed their fate. He approached me at my contaminated, symbolic location for a threat, offering $2 million cash with no NDA required. "You can't buy back your crimes," I told him, not knowing my attorney had advised me to wear a wire. Brad's response? "We know people who can make you disappear." That recording became federal evidence of witness intimidation. The next morning, someone shot out my ranch house windows, leaving a dead coyote on the porch with a note, "You're next." Emma stayed with her grandmother for safety while I loaded my shotgun and prepared for the biggest fight of my life. That's when Mabel from the county clerk's office made a move that changed everything. She called me at midnight, scared but determined, asking me to meet her at the office before dawn. What she showed me in a dusty box marked misfiled documents 19992-002 was pure gold. The original HOA incorporation papers for Clearwater Meadows, except they were never actually filed. Karen had listed herself as sole managing member with unlimited authority over community funds, but most residents had signed blank signature pages at what they thought was a welcome party. They never saw the actual bylaws giving Karen dictatorial power. But here's the kicker. My forensic accountant friend analyzed the HOA bank records obtained through legal discovery. Of the $340,000, 0 cents collected in fees and fines, only $50,000, 0 cents, had been spent on actual community improvements. The other $290,000, 0 cents, transferred to Clearwater Development LLC, Brad's company. Knowledge nugget: embezzlement of HOA funds is prosecutable under state theft statutes. Automatic felony over $1,500, 0 cents in most jurisdictions. The financial web went deeper than simple theft. Karen's insurance claims against neighboring properties, including my ranch, were completely fabricated. The same Phoenix insurance adjuster had handled every claim, and guess what? She was Karen's college roommate. Every accident and property damage incident had been staged, with security footage from my cameras proving HOA members created fake damage scenarios. Then I discovered the political corruption that made Karen's scheme possible. The county commissioner who'd supported that anti-ranch ordinance had received a $25,000 0-cent consulting fee from Brad's development company. The judge who granted Karen's original restraining order, his investment portfolio included shares in Clearwater Development LLC, purchased at below-market rates. Another knowledge nugget: public corruption cases often result in RICO charges. Racketeering conviction carries a 20-year sentence. But the environmental cover-up was the smoking gun that could destroy them all. EPA testing revealed Karen's development had illegally disposed of construction waste directly into my aquifer. Contamination levels were 50 times the legal limit, affecting drinking water for the entire township. Karen knew about the contamination. Hidden environmental impact reports showed she'd received warnings 6 months earlier, but chose to hide the evidence rather than pay for proper disposal. Cleanup costs were estimated at $2 million, with Karen's development company liable for every penny. More importantly, intentional environmental contamination carried federal criminal charges that couldn't be plea bargained away. Standing in that government office at sunrise, surrounded by evidence of fraud, corruption, and environmental crimes, I realized something crucial. Karen's entire empire was built on quicksand. Every source of her power, political connections, legal authority, community support, was based on lies and criminal activity. But she still had expensive lawyers and corrupt officials protecting her. I needed a way to expose everything at once, in a form she couldn't control or suppress. That's when I remembered the upcoming county fair. Every year, the fair included a public forum on community development where residents could voice concerns about local issues. It was broadcast live on local TV and radio, with standing room-only crowds. Karen would never expect a simple cowboy to understand the complexity of her criminal enterprise well enough to explain it publicly. She'd gotten so arrogant, so confident in her ability to manipulate the system, that she'd never considered someone might actually fight back with her own weapons. The plan was simple. Use the county fair's public forum to present irrefutable evidence of Karen's crimes to the entire community simultaneously. Make it impossible for corrupt officials to suppress the truth, or for Karen to spin the narrative. I had 3 weeks to prepare a presentation that would expose a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy and bring down the most powerful person in the county. Time to show everyone that sometimes the good guys really can win. Assembling my team felt like putting together the Avengers, if the Avengers specialized in taking down corrupt HOAs instead of alien invasions. The civil rights attorney from Billings brought constitutional law expertise and a burning hatred for discrimination. The environmental lawyer from Denver had made a career out of nailing corporations for water contamination. A former FBI agent turned private investigator knew exactly how to document criminal evidence that would hold up in federal court. But the real secret weapon was my forensic accountant friend from college, a guy who could trace money through more shell companies than a Russian oligarch. He explained Karen's financial maze in terms even I could understand. She created 5 different LLCs, all controlled by Brad, to hide money movement between HOA fees and personal accounts. It's like a criminal shell game, but with paper trails. The legal strategy was beautifully simple. Hit him with everything at once. Simultaneous federal and state charges including RICO, environmental crimes, and public corruption. A civil rights lawsuit under Section 1985 for conspiracy to deprive constitutional rights. Here's your knowledge nugget. RICO allows seizure of all assets obtained through criminal enterprise. That includes personal homes purchased with stolen. We also filed an environmental lawsuit seeking immediate injunction to stop all development activity, plus a class action on behalf of HOA members defrauded by Karen's fake organization. Gathering evidence became my full-time job. My security cameras had provided 6 months of documented harassment, trespassing, and property destruction. Financial records showed a clear money trail from HOA accounts to personal enrichment. Environmental testing proved intentional contamination and cover-up. Testimony from Phoenix victims established Karen's pattern of discrimination and fraud. The technical approach required translating complex crimes into language regular folks could understand. The environmental engineer mapped the contamination plume. Industrial runoff from their construction site flows directly into Morrison's ranch aquifer. No way this was accidental. Knowledge nugget. Environmental crimes carry strict liability. Intent doesn't matter, only that contamination occurred and the defendant was responsible. My private investigator used cell phone data to track Karen's vehicles. She was on Morrison property 47 times without permission, clear evidence of stalking behavior. Meanwhile, we realized other HOA members were victims too. Many elderly residents feared Karen's retaliation but were willing to testify if protected. Final knowledge nugget. Whistleblower protection laws shield HOA members who report financial fraud. Retaliation becomes a separate federal crime. The Regional Cattlemen's Association provided not just legal defense funds but media support. Environmental groups joined our lawsuit, seeing precedent for protecting rural water rights. Even my daughter Emma got involved. coaching me on speaking clearly like at school while I practiced my presentation. Learning PowerPoint at 34 felt like teaching a dinosaur to text, but my calloused hands slowly mastered the laptop keyboard. The environmental lawyer prepared court papers for immediate injunction if Karen tried to flee. We installed professional recording equipment at the county fair venue because everything had to be captured perfectly. The media strategy was crucial. Document everything for maximum public impact, time the revelation when maximum community members would be present, and prepare evidence packets for the State Attorney General, FBI, and EPA simultaneously. Social media would show before and after photos of environmental damage that spoke louder than any speech. But the personal cost was crushing. My savings were exhausted, the ranch mortgaged to pay legal fees. Emma asking why Daddy looked so tired broke my heart every time. My ex-wife threatened to seek full custody due to the unstable situation. I survived on stale coffee and pizza boxes scattered across my dining table, papers covering every surface like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. The final preparations included dry runs of my presentation, timing everything for maximum impact. We had backup plans if Karen tried to disrupt the county fair or flee the jurisdiction. Everything was ready for the public confrontation that would expose Karen's crimes to the entire community. 3 years of harassment, 6 months of legal warfare, and countless sleepless nights had led to this moment. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She discovered I was preparing something big through an HOA member who worked at the copy shop where I'd been printing evidence packets. Her response was swift and desperate. A break-in at my attorney's office, searching for legal documents that could reveal our strategy. The security system caught Brad on camera rifling through file cabinets at 2 a.m., but the corrupted police claimed insufficient evidence for charges. Amazing how camera footage becomes blurry when it's inconvenient for the wrong people. Karen's smear campaign went nuclear. Social media posts portrayed me as a dangerous loner obsessed with conspiracy theories. She created a fake GoFundMe claiming she needed protection from her stalker neighbor, complete with staged photos of her looking frightened. Local Facebook groups got flooded with Karen supporters posting concerns about public safety and demanding I be banned from the county fair. The anonymous threatening calls started coming faster than telemarketers during election season. My phone buzzed constantly with distorted voices promising violence if I didn't back off. Emma asking why people were being mean to Daddy nearly broke my resolve, but I couldn't quit when we were this close to exposing the truth. Karen convinced the county commissioner to increase security at the fair, hoping armed guards would intimidate me into silence. She spread rumors that I was mentally unstable and planning to hurt people at the public forum. Anonymous calls to Child Protective Services claimed I was an unfit parent due to paranoid behavior. But Karen's desperation led to her biggest mistake yet. More of my cattle died from contaminated water. The veterinarian confirmed industrial poisoning was spreading through the aquifer. My well became completely unusable, forcing my family to buy bottled water for basic needs while our neighbors still drank poison. EPA testing revealed contamination spreading to other properties, but Karen's response showed just how far she'd fallen. She actually claimed I had poisoned my own well for sympathy and lawsuit money. The woman was accusing me of killing my own livestock and contaminating my family's drinking water for legal advantage. The legal harassment escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Karen's attorneys filed frivolous lawsuits for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Each lawsuit required my attorney's time and my money to defend, death by 1,000 legal cuts designed to exhaust my resources before trial. The stack of legal papers on my kitchen table grew so high that Emma started using crayons to organize them by color, turning my legal nightmare into her art project. Kids have a way of finding light in the darkest situations. Then the corruption deepened to levels that would make a Chicago politician blush. The county judge, Karen's ally, granted a restraining order so broad it prevented me from harassing HOA members. The order was deliberately vague, making it illegal for me to document further crimes or interview witnesses. Sheriff Thompson served the papers with a smug smile, saying maybe you should just sell and move on. While I was legally muzzled, Karen's husband began construction on my disputed 47 acres, despite ongoing litigation. Bulldozers arrived at dawn, destroying century-old oak trees my grandfather had planted. Standing on my porch, watching heritage timber fall while legally powerless to stop it, felt like watching vandals desecrate a cemetery. But my allies continued gathering evidence despite the restraining order. The private investigator documented Brad's illegal construction activity. The environmental lawyer filed emergency motions to stop destruction of potential crime scenes. Even destroying evidence during pending litigation constituted obstruction of justice, separate felony charges that kept adding to their growing criminal liability. Karen made one final attempt at controlling the narrative. She showed up at Emma's school, claiming to be a concerned citizen reporting an unsafe home environment. Thankfully, the principal wasn't an HOA member and politely escorted Karen off the property, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe from her reach. Anonymous letters sent to my customers claimed my beef was contaminated, causing me to lose 60% of my customer base overnight. The smell of burning hate mail in my fireplace mixed with sage from outside, the acrid smoke of other people's evil polluting the clean Montana air. Karen offered one last settlement, $100,000 and an NDA to never discuss HOA activities. We met at a neutral diner in the neighboring town, both sides bringing attorneys and court reporters. Karen thought she was controlling the situation. Take this deal or lose everything. Your ranch, your daughter, your reputation, she threatened. My response was, the first time I'd shown confidence in months, see you at the county fair. For the first time, Karen's face cracked with uncertainty. She was finally realizing this cowboy wasn't backing down. Karen's nuclear response came at 5 a.m. with an urgent phone call from my attorney. She'd filed an emergency petition to have me declared mentally incompetent, claiming my obsessive behavior and paranoid accusations proved I was dangerous to myself and others. The petition included doctored social media posts and fake witness statements from HOA members, all designed to silence me before the county fair. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the day before the fair. No coincidence there. Karen was trying to have me declared legally insane, so nothing I said would carry weight with the community. But she wasn't finished destroying my life. My ex-wife simultaneously filed for emergency full custody, citing the unstable living situation at the ranch. What I discovered later was that Karen had been secretly paying my ex-wife's attorney fees through one of her shell companies. The custody hearing was scheduled for the same day as the competency hearing. Karen's strategy was brilliant in its cruelty: destroy my credibility and isolate me completely on the eve of my biggest fight. The media assassination was perfectly orchestrated. The local newspaper ran a front-page story: Troubled Ranchers' Vendetta Against Community. The article cited anonymous sources, claiming I'd threatened violence at the county fair, accompanied by photos of me looking disheveled after months of sleepless nights. Karen was quoted as a reluctant spokesperson who feared for community safety. Regional TV news picked up the story, portraying me as an unstable extremist bent on revenge. The political pressure reached absurd levels. County commissioners called an emergency meeting to address public safety concerns, discussing whether to cancel the fair's public forum entirely. Karen's supporters packed the meeting, demanding I be banned from public events. I sat alone in the back row, while former friends avoided eye contact like I had some contagious disease. Then someone called in an anonymous bomb threat against the fairgrounds, which got blamed on my inflammatory rhetoric. The woman was literally framing me for terrorism to avoid a PowerPoint presentation. But Karen's financial strangulation was her most vicious move yet. The bank foreclosed on my ranch mortgage, claiming I'd violated terms by creating a public nuisance. Sheriff Thompson arrived with eviction papers. I had 48 hours to vacate property my family had owned for 70 years. Here's the twist that showed Karen's true desperation. My attorney discovered the mortgage had been sold to one of Karen's shell companies the week before a foreclosure. She was literally buying my debt to steal my land, then immediately submitting a purchase offer at the foreclosure auction. My legal team rallied like the cavalry in an old western. The civil rights attorney filed an emergency federal injunction to stop the foreclosure. The environmental lawyer got the EPA to declare my ranch a potential Superfund site, which legally prevented any sale. The forensic accountant traced the money used to purchase my mortgage back to stolen HOA funds. More evidence of Karen's criminal enterprise. Karen's desperation reached comic book villain levels when she attempted to bribe my attorney to withdraw from the case. The conversation was recorded as evidence of witness tampering. Then Brad approached me directly at my contaminated well, symbolic location for a final threat. "We know people who can make you disappear," he said, apparently forgetting I was wearing a wire. That recording became federal evidence of witness intimidation, but Karen wasn't done. The night before the county fair, someone shot out my ranch house windows, leaving a dead coyote on the front porch with a note. Emma stayed with her grandmother while I loaded my shotgun and checked doors and windows, getting zero sleep before the biggest day of my life. The sound of every settling board in the house made me jump, but I wasn't backing down now. Morning arrived with carnival smells. Funnel cake and hay, livestock and diesel generators. I arrived at the fairgrounds early to set up my presentation. Despite death threats, Karen arrived with private security, claiming she'd received credible threats, and media swarmed due to the manufactured controversy. Federal agents positioned themselves quietly in the crowd. My attorney had tipped them off that today would be the day Karen's criminal empire finally collapsed. The smell of normal county fair life, barbecue smoke and sawdust, masked the extraordinary confrontation about to unfold in front of 300 witnesses. The livestock pavilion was packed beyond capacity, 300 community members squeezed into a space meant for 200, with overflow crowds watching from outside. The public forum began with Karen taking the microphone first, playing the victim card like a seasoned politician. "I'm here today because I've been the target of an unhinged neighbor's harassment campaign," she said, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. She produced fake medical records, claiming stress health problems from my stalking behavior, complete with doctors' statements that were probably as real as her concern for community welfare. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the audience while Karen dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I sat calmly in the back row, federal agents positioned throughout the crowd like plainclothes guardian angels. Karen had no idea she was about to walk into the most beautiful trap in Montana legal history. When my turn came, I walked to the podium with the confidence of a man holding 4 aces. My opening line was simple. "I'm going to show you documents. You decide what they mean." First slide. My grandfather's original 1952 deed, crystal clear, proving the Morrison family owned every disputed acre. The audience leaned forward, studying the projection screen with growing interest. Second slide. Karen's forged 1978 survey, with signatures that didn't match county records. I let the evidence speak for itself while the crowd's murmurs shifted from sympathy for Karen to confusion and anger. "Forging government documents is a federal felony," I said clearly. "Each signature is a separate crime." But the real bombshell came with slide 3, bank statements showing how Karen had collected $340,000 in illegal HOA fees. The numbers were projected big enough for everyone to see. Money transfers from community funds directly to Karen's personal accounts. HOA members gasped as they realized they'd been systematically defrauded for years. Karen jumped up screaming, "Those documents are fabricated!" Exactly the desperate reaction I'd hoped for. Her perfect composure finally cracked, mascara running as she gestured wildly at the screen. The woman who terrorized an entire community for months was having a public meltdown. Then came the environmental evidence that turned gasps into outrage. Before and after photos of my poisoned well and dead cattle filled the screen. EPA test results showing contamination levels 50 times the legal limit. Video footage of illegal dumping from Clearwater Meadows construction site with Brad clearly visible directing the operation. The audience included families whose children drank from the same aquifer. Their fury was immediate and justified. Karen's husband stood to leave but found federal agents blocking every exit. The Phoenix connection sealed their fate. Video testimony from the Hispanic family describing identical harassment, discrimination, and forced sale of their generational farm. Newspaper archives proving this was Karen's systematic criminal enterprise, not an isolated property dispute. The community realized they'd been harboring predators who specialized in destroying vulnerable families. But the political corruption evidence brought the house down. Documents showing the $25,000 bribe to the county commissioner, email records proving the judge's financial ties to Karen's development company, phone recordings of Sheriff Thompson discussing ways to pressure the cowboy. The audience erupted in shouts demanding immediate arrests, with county officials heading for exits like rats abandoning a sinking ship. My final slide was the mic drop moment I'd been building toward. Question: What happens when you steal $340,000 through a fake HOA, contaminate public water supply, bribe government officials, and threaten families? I paused, looking directly at Karen's tear-streaked face. Answer: you lose everything, and everyone watching knows you're criminals. Federal agents stepped forward with arrest warrants as I spoke. Karen screamed, "This is a setup!" as handcuffs clicked into place, but the only thing being set up was justice finally being served. The FBI arrested Karen, Brad, the county commissioner, and the HOA attorney on federal charges. As the charges were read aloud, RICO conspiracy, environmental crimes, wire fraud, bribery, civil rights violations. The crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard 3 counties over. Sheriff Thompson tried slipping away, but state police arrested him for corruption and witness intimidation. Local news cameras captured everything, with the story going statewide within hours. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. HOA members apologized through tears, elderly residents finally shared their stories of intimidation, and the town mayor called for immediate investigation of all county land deals. When regional TV interviewed me live, I stayed calm and dignified. This isn't about me versus them. It's about protecting communities from predators who exploit good people's trust. Justice tastes like freedom, and it's sweeter than any county fair funnel cake. The legal resolution was swift and satisfying. Karen and Brad pleaded guilty to 47 federal charges, earning 15 years each in federal prison. Asset forfeiture recovered $23 million, including Karen's house, cars, and jewelry. Turns out crime really doesn't pay when you're facing RICO prosecution. Every defrauded HOA member received full refunds plus damages, and environmental cleanup began immediately using seized criminal assets. My ranch's water well was cleaned and certified safe by independent testing, paid for with money Karen had stolen from her own neighbors. My personal life healed faster than I'd dared hope. The custody case got dismissed when my ex-wife admitted Karen had paid her legal fees, and Emma returned to the ranch with stories about helping Grandma bake cookies while Daddy fought the bad people. We planted new oak trees where Brad's bulldozers had destroyed the old ones, Emma insisting we needed happy trees to replace the sad ones. The sound of her laughter echoing across restored pastures, mixing with cattle lowing contentedly in clean grass, reminded me why this fight had been worth every sleepless night. My customer base returned stronger than ever. Integrity Beef became our brand, with people driving from 3 states away to buy from that rancher who stood up to corruption. The ranch that was barely breaking even became a thriving operation that could fund Emma's college education twice over. The community recovery was beautiful to witness. Clearwater Meadows formed a legitimate HOA with transparent bylaws and elected leadership. We planted a community garden on the former site of Karen's illegal construction project, turning poisoned ground into something that feeds families. Monthly potluck dinners brought neighbors together, healing relationships that Karen's lies had damaged. My handshakes felt firm and confident again, calluses honest from ranch work instead of legal battles. But the best part was establishing the Morrison Ranch Educational Foundation using recovered criminal funds. We provide scholarships for rural students studying environmental science and agricultural law, run a free legal clinic for families facing land grab schemes, and placed a conservation easement on the ranch ensuring it can never be developed. Emma became our youngest volunteer, teaching city kids about ranch life and explaining why bad people can't win when good people work together. The broader impact exceeded anything I'd imagined. My case inspired similar investigations in 3 other states, leading to a federal task force investigating HOA fraud nationwide. A documentary filmmaker wants to tell our story, with all profits going to the foundation. Congressional hearings on rural land rights featured my testimony, and my case established legal precedent that fake HOAs constitute organized crime under RICO statutes. I remarried Sarah, the local teacher who'd supported me throughout the ordeal. Our wedding was held in the pasture where Karen had tried to build her illegal development, with Emma serving as flower girl, scattering wildflower petals instead of traditional roses. The regional cattleman elected me president, giving me a platform to advocate for property rights across the Mountain West. Standing in the same spot as when this story began, I'm surrounded not by destruction, but by restoration. Our new house sits where the old one stood, featuring solar panels and sustainable design that proves you can honor the past while building for the future. The Clearwater Meadows residents are now friends and neighbors instead of enemies, and Emma's college fund is fully restored with enough left over for future generations. The wind through healthy grass and trees carries the sound of meadowlarks singing again, nature's way of saying everything's going to be okay. If there's one lesson from this whole ordeal, it's this. Sometimes good people stay quiet because fighting seems hopeless. But when you stand up to bullies with truth and persistence, communities rally around justice. Document everything, research your local laws, and never let anyone intimidate you into giving up your rights. Every family deserves to feel safe in their home and community. So here's my challenge to you. If you've dealt with HOA nightmares or corrupt local officials, share your story in the comments. Sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption. And make sure you subscribe for more stories about ordinary people defeating extraordinary corruption, because they count on you staying quiet. Don't give them that power. Emma asked me yesterday, "Daddy, are the bad people really gone?" My answer was simple, yes, sweetheart, and now we make sure they can't hurt other families. That's a promise worth keeping.